Hey guys, and welcome back to my Dead by Daylight weapon series. As I mentioned in the previous video, I did two in tandem this time because I went back to the Legion knives since the first one was so popular. So the natural follow-up to Susie's disgusting ruler would be Joey's gnarly Karambit. I hope I'm saying that correct. I've actually never heard anybody say that word. I also don't know how to hold it, but this feels right. This one definitely feels a lot more like the original in that it's a more tactical, real-looking knife, whereas Susie's shank was just an amalgamation of stuff. Like, minus the blood, you could probably buy this one in a store. If you've been following along and you've already seen my original Legion knife, this is gonna seem a little familiar because, it's a knife. It's got the basic metallic finish. It's got, bevels and blood and stuff. But it's going to be a great refresher just in time for you guys to finish all of your Halloween costumes. As with the rest of this series, this video is sponsored by Coscom Cosplay Supplies. I'm sure you're tired of hearing me say it, but their stuff is awesome. Please go buy some. You still have time. You still have time before Halloween. Buy some. I usually have some snarky game-related comment to make when I do these things, but I honestly don't know anything about the, the lore of this particular version of Legion, so I don't have any of that to offer you. And to be totally honest, I haven't played Dead in months and I'm like 17 updates behind. So, because I'm a bad gamer with a full-time job and this. I do all of this. I don't have time to play games anymore. I just make the weapons from the game. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, you guys know the drill. Pattern, cut, nice. I was going to reinforce this with another kitchen skewer, but I forgot that this weapon has very inconveniently placed holes. We'll just have to let the high-density EVA foam work its magic. Look at those beautiful new white gel pens. So much better. I roughly cut out 2 pieces of 6mm high-density EVA foam. I'm hoping that will be sufficiently stable. Then I glued them together using Barge contact cement and making sure the end result stayed flat. After that, I took it over to the bandsaw to trim off all the excess. While this can be done with a knife, the bandsaw is really invaluable when it comes to some of those tiny notches and weird curves. Once it's all cut out, I go back in and mark out all the bevels, and I do this on both sides. But before I get to the beveling, I wanted to cut out those holes. After a few failed attempts using my Dremel's various attachments, I settled on using this big chunky drill bit. A drill press would have been really lovely for this. Once I got all those cut out, I moved on to the beveling. And all of this was done using my Dremel's sanding drum. I also used my big oscillating belt sander to thin it to a nice point at the end. I used my smaller sanding drum to cut in some of the other details. And of course, I did all of this while wearing the proper protective equipment. After I was done with all of the sanding, I went back in with a stone bit to smooth all of the rough sanding to a much nicer finish. And to take the smoothing one step further, I then hit the whole thing with a heat gun to burn away the tiny little bitties and also seal the whole thing before the next step, which in this case is Flex Bond. I applied several coats to help smooth the overall finish. This does a pretty good job, but sometimes I'm left with brush strokes. So after the Flex Bond had dried, I hit it with some Plastidip as well to smooth the finish. After all that, it's still not perfect, but that's okay. It's still going to be a super cool knife. For the blade of the knife, I went back to the Alclad silver airbrush paint that I used for the original Legion knife. The shine is of course unbeatable, but it does show all of your imperfections. I did want to mention something that I noticed on the original Legion knife, The areas that I painted with the Alclad, most notably around the blood, have this weird shadowed look. And I don't know what caused that, but I just wanted to mention it since the longevity of the things I make is always a concern of mine. Next, I painted the handle with plain old black acrylic. Do you like my ramshackle drying setups? Anyway, once the base coats were dry, I masked off the blade to prepare the handle for the lovely carbon fiber pattern. I was initially very worried about how to accomplish this, but thanks to the power of the internet, I discovered this stuff, which is normally used underneath things to keep them from sliding. I hid a piece of it with a little bit of spray adhesive, just enough so that it has some grab, and then I carefully stuck it to the handle. Then I immediately sprayed it with a slightly lighter silver airbrush paint. Since it wasn't totally flat, it didn't stick in certain spots, so the pattern isn't as pristine at the edges as I would have liked, but overall the effect turned out great. Once all of that was done, it was time to wrap the handle. It seemed so simple at a glance, but it actually proved to be very annoying because of the angle of this wrap. After I glued these faux wrap pieces down, then I went through 3 different glues trying to wrap the rest. I ended up using hot glue because it dried faster and I could wrap a larger area at a time. This worked well, except that it left a bit of a mess in some spots. Of course, there's nothing a little blood can't hide. Using the same blood mixture from Susie's knife, I bloodied up the handle using my hand, and then for the blade, I used the same technique from the original, where I added some drips and then hung it to dry in order to create a more 3-dimensional effect. And that's it for this one. Another Legion knife in the books. So there you have it, guys. This is not a new process. You guys have been along for this whole series. You understand the basics now. I'm sure you get it, but I hope this was a good refresher. And also for anybody wanting to make this particular knife, now you know, now you've seen it. The pattern is available on my website. I'm going to be bundling them into a 3-pack now that I've finally gotten all of them out there. It only took me forever. But I hope you found this video helpful. I hope maybe some of these techniques can be applied to whatever you're trying to get done in time for Halloween or whatever the next con is. As always, I had fun making it, as challenging as it turned out to be. And once again, a big thank you to Yanna and Noah for helping me film the intro for this. They were absolutely amazing. I had so much fun doing it. So that's all I have for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And until then, stay tuned for awesome.